Football's 4 burning questions in 45 seconds or less. Have Man City ruined football?
I feel like everyone's stretching it with Man City ruining football, right? I see as they've made everybody take a second look at themselves and understand that investment is key when it comes to winning football. So when it comes to winning trophies in football, like I look at Man United back in the day, and don't get me wrong, they didn't spend as much money as Man City, but when you put it into context, they did spend quite a few pounds to get their team for Sir Alex Ferguson, to make sure that he did that treble, to make sure he did the 3-peat. So Man City, I wouldn't say they've ruined football, they just made it that little bit more competitive, meaning everybody has to step their game up, and if they don't, boy, that's their business.
There is a serious conversation to be had around the topic of sports washing, around the topic of the allegations of financial breaches against Man City by the Premier League, which we don't know when that's going to come to light. But in terms of this Champions League win, I don't think the final played out in the way those who want to kind of frame the narrative around Man City ruining and kind of dominating everything. Because the final was close. Like, it wasn't exactly the steamroll kind of that we saw in the semi-final against Real Madrid. So it does prove that on the biggest occasions it still is the finest of margins. So I do understand people's concerns, but I don't think it's as black and white as maybe some people want to kind of boil it down to. And I do think there are clubs with finances who can compete.
Is Italian football back on the rise?
I think it's a fair point to say probably yes after this season. There was a little bit of fortune if we just look at the Champions League draw, with the fact that Napoli and both Milan clubs were on one side of the draw, basically away from all the big hitters on the other side. So that allowed two Serie A ties in the quarterfinal and the semi-final. But that was in itself quite impressive, and the fact that none of those clubs were Juventus also speaks to the power below it. You know, Napoli have had a really, really good season. Both Milan clubs too have got some really good players. I think it's a massive statement that, say, Rafa Leao is staying at AC Milan when he could have gone to a massive club this summer. A really, really good talent. Financially, yeah, it's not as big as the Premier League, and there are other teams that could still take big players away. But I think it's a positive year for Italian football.
Yeah, it is a positive year for Italian football. I agree with you there. But are they back on the rise? Like you said, they got fortunate in the Champions League. I look at their run of the Champions League, and I'm probably going to get slaughtered for this, but you put a Chelsea in their run of the Champions League, you put an Arsenal in their run of the Champions League. Okay, Arsenal might be stretching it, but you put those teams in their run of the Champions League, and it's an easy route to the final for them, you know. So I just feel like they did get a little bit lucky with their draw, and then I think about the Inter Milan AC Milan semi-final and just how much of a drag it was, and it just wasn't as entertaining. Don't get me wrong, like, atmosphere wise it was great, but the actual football itself, it just wasn't up there for me. But then you look at the Europa League, you look at the Conference League, having Roma and Fiorentina in those finals is great. They still lost though. So let's just see how it goes next season, and then we can ask again, is Italian football back on the rise?
Who is right in the FA versus WSL argument over the Women's World Cup release?
Is it fair to say that both of them are right? Because I understand where the WSL are coming from, I understand where the FA is coming from, and I understand as a whole these players need to rest, right?
Yeah.
And if we leave the decision with them, it's unlikely that they're all going to come to a unanimous decision as to what they want to do. But I believe that all these players need some rest. They've had a lot of ACL injuries this season alone, and that's definitely taken a toll on these players. But I understand that Serena Wiegman, she probably needs more time to get these players assembled, especially because they've got to travel such a long way. So where is the time for them to rest, and where is the time for them to kind of get together as a cohort and start training together as one? It's a bit of a sticky one. What about you?
I do agree it's a nuanced discussion. I do lean more with Serena Wiegman and England on this sense. Maybe not fully with the FA in terms of organisation, long-term kind of strategy, because we've known where the Women's World Cup was going to be for quite a bit of time now. And this dispute has been going on, I think, since like October, November time. So the fact that they've only come to a resolution at literally the start of June is just ridiculous. I do think on kind of a different topic, this is kind of showing maybe the growing strain as the women's game, particularly the WSL, grows. Because I think revenues on the WSL have gone up this year. The clubs are seeing that financial growth and also interest in the game grow. So I could only imagine the long-term effects on this might be negative for the England kind of club versus country debate that's happened in the men's game for many years.
Should Premier League clubs be scared of Saudi's investment?
It is quite stark when you see top level players, superstars move across, but I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference to younger players, because I still see this as what we would deem like the MLS, basically. To sound very crude, retirement home. Like it's a nice payoff at the end of a career for legends. I don't see how it drastically changes until the Premier League finances dip significantly, until the prestige and history of playing in the Champions League dips, until the Saudi game itself grows internationally and from a domestic level. I can't see even an Erling Haaland or a Kylian Mbappe or some of those younger players, 20 to 25-year-old, are going to go there. It is serious because I think Saudi Arabian investment and Middle East investment is clearly growing in sport. That's a broader question, but for the Premier League, I don't think it's a massive issue right now.
Joe, I agree with you on that standpoint, because I feel like when you think about football and the prestigious leagues, you automatically think of the Premier League, you think of La Liga, you think of Liga, and I'm not too sure, people call it a farmers league, but still, it's still one of the top 5, right? And then you don't necessarily think of the Saudi league. So are these young talents gonna wanna go to Saudi Arabia? But then on the other hand, I look at young players such as Oscar, who used to play for Chelsea, right? At the age of, I think it was 23, he went to China because he wanted more money, wanted a better life for his family, etc. But how many players are on that kind of wavelength as well, that want to actually make money for their families, and Saudi can offer them that money? So if you get all the big superstars going to this league, I don't know, someday the younger players might just follow suit.